Mike Burton is president and CEO of C&K Holdings. Been there since 2003, I think, is when you started the organization, Mike. His company is a major intermodal player, certainly in the Chicagoland market, but Mike has some 800 trucks running around the country, primarily in the area of intermodal. And so, Mike, welcome to our new setup here at the Traffic Club of Chicago. We're calling this Traffic Jam. Mike, one of the things that our industry has got lots of questions about is capacity. We're all fighting for it. There are lots of areas that surround capacity, whether it's drivers or dwell time, turns or turnover. It could be competition, and it could be chassis that are creating some issues that fall into the capacity gap. And so what I want to do is kind of look at the forces that are impacting capacity in Chicagoland in particular. And as our intermodal marketplace has the demands on it that pretty much all of the terminal areas do. Can you begin to touch base on those pieces of capacity that you see as both difficult and then perhaps some that we can conquer?
Sure, be happy to. I'll stay focused primarily on the Chicagoland area to give examples there, but most markets, both on the ports and inland, have a lot of the same situation going on throughout the U.S. So, really, if you go back to where all this happened is, when we had COVID, we had a lot of people off the labor, employees were off, customers were constrained, and, freight stopped for, a month or two coming out of China and some of the other origin countries. And then all of a sudden things started to open back up and pick back up, but we really never got, the labor back, the warehouses open to the way they should be. And now all this volume is coming through because we want, to get it back on the shelves, and, inventory is very low. So, what we saw happen, the first thing we saw happen is we struggled to deliver freight to the warehouses for them to accept it. And so what happened there is once that started to happen, we started to see, the BCOs or the customers holding on to their freight a lot longer because they couldn't unload it. So the chassis dwell, and we've talked to a number of chassis providers, out there, they say their dwell really doubled in this time frame. So if on average it was 5 days out that they were holding on to their chassis, it now went to 10 days. So now if you double the amount of chassis days that you have out there, assuming everything is at close to capacity, you need twice the amount of chassis to cover the same amount of freight. And on top of that, freight was growing. So we really got into a chassis shortage. That was our biggest issue. And, then it spiraled down from that area, from the chassis shortage perspective. Then, we couldn't, the railroads didn't have enough chassis to unload the trains, and the trains started to back up. Then the rail yards started to get full. When the rail yards are full, it takes longer to get in and out for the truckers. The big issue that we see that's really impacted the drayage world, and thus, the supply chain and delivering to the freight in Chicago, had to do with once the chassis were short, the drayage community could no longer pick up the chassis and the container at the rail location. We had to chase after all over the city to find chassis that were available. So our dispatchers would wake up in the morning and say, okay, I've got 30 loads to get out of a particular rail yard, but there's only 5 chassis there, so I got to go hunt down 25 other chassis. And, they were going from rail to rail facility. What that does is reduces the productivity of the driver. So now the productivity of the driver is cut by a third. So on average, if he was going from CN Harvey to Joliet to do a drop and pick, drop a load, pick up an empty, he may be able to get 3 loads done. Now at most he could get 2. So his productivity has been cut really down. And it was even, more exasperated if you looked at shorter lengths of haul. And so, what we found is the drivers became less productive at the same time when rates were going up and the drivers could go do other things. And so we lost some drivers, and we had to address some market conditions to get the drivers paid a little bit differently. But so it's been it just continued a self-fulfilling cycle of continuous problems that we haven't been able to get out of. Even though the amount of freight slowed down coming into Chicago, at least international freight, and but we still haven't been able to get caught up. So it's been a host of things, and it's just not one issue, but it's all of them combined together that's caused the shortage. But I will tell you, I don't think it's really per se a driver shortage problem. It's a driver productivity and equipment problem that's resulted in the need to have more drivers, and they're just not there.
There are still a lot of ships in ports that are yet to be unloaded. So at least in the near future, it doesn't look like we're going to overcome that for a period of time, because all of the pieces are separated. So the puzzle is difficult to put back together. One of the things, though, that we talk about a lot is not just capacity, but congestion. And so congestion at the ports, what you're saying is congestion at the rail yards. And so a question becomes, is the customer, the shipper, the beneficial owner of freight, are they in a position to help us to make turns more frequent so that a driver can be more productive and not leave the dray community for some perhaps higher paying freight?
Yeah, that certainly at any point in the delivery cycle, if the BCO can help us, if he can help our turn times of getting in and out, if he can unload the box quicker, so that we can reuse that chassis, those all help reduce the supply chain. What we've seen is a number of our larger customers are willing to get an outside lot when they're full and actually take the boxes to the ground and to free up the chassis. So those are just a couple examples of what we've seen some of the BCOs do. And most importantly, what we saw at first is when we first started to run into the issues is that, everyone was very frustrated, with the turn times being reduced and the demurrage that was now starting to build back up. And then at the other end, you got the per diem charges. And, they were really, blaming, the trucker. And rightfully so. They're the ones that pick it up and deliver the freight. But I think not the nice thing, but the thing that occurred, which has been very positive, is the BCOs really started to understand what the issues were. They started to listen to it. They would talk to a couple other drayage companies, not just maybe the one that they were working with, and they were seeing that everyone was facing the same thing. And then we said, okay, how do we work on this together, and what can we do? And the number of BCOs came back and, said, hey, I know you're losing your driver because we're only getting 2 turns instead of 3, and they're paid per move. What can we do to help you out, whether it be on the rate? And so, we've used that to continue to retain and hopefully attract our drivers to want to do this freight. And so we've had a really good working relationship with our BCOs, which has been great.
There are lots of things that impact what we do. Certainly costs, compliance, compatibility, computer and technology issues. All of these have been rolling forward, making our supply chain better, but it also has required a lot from trucking companies in terms of being compliant with their computer and technology issues. All of that has added cost in an effort to lower costs. So it's the investment on the front end that helps everything to go down on the back end. Now, with fuel prices going way, way up and the inflation hitting us as it is, we're seeing costs go up. The question becomes, is this temporary? Is it going to last for a long time? Is it predictable? Do you have any insight as to either when this may abate or if it will level off?
Well, first of all, I tell you, if I've ever recommended you on a stock and you do the opposite, you'll do much better off than if you listen to what I said. So I am not a very good predictor of what's going to happen in our economy. I think that, listen, we're not going to be able to get a lot more chassis into the marketplace. They just can't be manufactured, and there's a whole host of reasons that we can get into that are causing that. The issue that we see, so we don't see there's going to be a tremendous amount of new drivers coming into the marketplace. So we're going to have to deal with the challenges. The only way I think it's really going to reduce down is if demand slows down. And we don't, with the backlog, especially on the international freight, with the backlog on both the West Coast and the East Coast, with all the ships and the freight not getting in quickly and backlog, we don't see that slowing down for at least a 3 to 6 month period. Beyond that, we don't know. I saw the first Freight Waves article today that talked about slowing consumer demand because of the cost of fuel and inflation, and people have spent a lot of money over the last 2 years coming out of COVID, and now they're not starting to spend their money on other things other than physical products. And they were saying that we might start to see a slowdown, but to date, we have not seen that. Most of our customers give us an outlook for the year, and they expect demand to be strong. And if you look at some macroeconomic factors, all the macroeconomic factors, continue to be pretty solid as far as unemployment and other housing and housing starts and housing prices and manufacturing. So, the only way I see this really improving is for demand to slow down. Otherwise, there's going to be some continued pressures.
It's an interesting dilemma because with inflation comes the consumer who can't spend as they did when their money was growing. They have some fixed costs which rise. And so I can see the future of the slowdown that you're predicting. And that looks like it's going to happen. The reality is the ships are still being unloaded at the rate they are. And so we're dealt with the hand that we're dealt with. And you play it out as best you can. You've certainly done a great job here in Chicagoland and throughout your system. And so we're grateful that you would take time and spend it with us for a little while. Any closing comments that you might want to add?
I think, it's, we've been fortunate to work with a lot of stakeholders in the industry, and, especially through the Traffic Club and what you guys do and how you bring everyone together. I think what we're seeing is more and more people wanting to work together. I think government wants to be involved now. That can be good, that can be bad. But hopefully they can bring capital to help support some of the projects and help improve, some of the issues that the supply chain has dealt with for a number of years. And I think just by us all working together and trying to find solutions, whether it be small ones, I think that we can continue to work through this. We still think it's going to be a challenge, but we hopefully can get to the point where rates are stabilized or coming down, or, depending on how you look at it, working out for the, for overall to make things a little more manageable, let's say.
Mike, I want to thank you for being on Traffic Jam with us today. You've been insightful and helpful, and I think you give a little balance to those who kind of want to know, where's my box? And you've been helpful in that regard. So thank you for understanding the industry, for sharing your business acumen with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Traffic Jam again. Thanks so much.